There are spaces you enter willingly, almost eagerly, believing you are safe while they quietly dismantle your mind from the inside out. You expected obvious danger, war zones, collapsing economies, violent streets, visible chaos. You were searching for threats that announce themselves with sirens and smoke. But you have been reading the wrong map. The most devastating collapses do not begin with explosions. They begin with environments that corrode your will so gradually you mistake decay for comfort. Ruin rarely arrives as a single catastrophic blow. It spreads like an infection, contracted in psychological climates you revisit daily, climates engineered, intentionally or not, to erode ambition, blur clarity, and domesticate power. The great political thinker Niccolò Machiavelli warned rulers about the hidden traps embedded in human association. He understood that power is rarely seized by brute force alone. It is more often surrendered through complacency, flattery, guilt, and illusion. What follows is not a list of physical locations but an exposure of invisible rooms, psychological architectures that appear harmless yet systematically strip you of agency. The second one is particularly dangerous because you are likely sitting inside it right now without realizing it. Place 1 is the martyr's court, the echo chamber of grievance. When your plans collapse, when you are overlooked, when the market turns and pride fractures, where do you go? You seek the nodding heads, the sympathetic listeners, the ones who pour reassurance and whisper that the game was rigged from the start. This environment runs on shared grievance as its currency. It may look like a friend group, an online community, a break room ritual. Everyone is wounded, but no one seeks a bandage. They seek an audience. It feels therapeutic. It feels validating. In truth, it anesthetizes responsibility. In his discourses, Machiavelli observed that human beings blame fortune for misfortune and praise their own wisdom for success. Surround yourself with people who validate your excuses and your ambition starves quietly. In the martyr's court, failure is never your fault. It is the economy, the algorithm, your upbringing, systemic injustice. Some of those forces are real. But comfort without accountability is a paralytic. History offers a warning in the fall of Piero Soderini, the Florentine statesman who surrounded himself with idealists while ruthless forces gathered at the gates. When the Medici returned with power and force, moral purity did not save him. He was exiled, his republic dismantled, undone not only by enemies but by his refusal to adapt to reality's brutality. When you remain in the martyr's court, you surrender agency. You stop asking how to weaponize failure and start asking whom to blame. And understand this: if you succeed, you threaten the entire identity structure of the group. Your escape proves the cage was never locked. So they sedate you with sympathy. Sympathy mimics love, but it functions as a leash. Leave environments where grievance replaces growth. If those around you are not bleeding in the arena, do not debrief battles with them. Swallow the loss. Let pain instruct you. Pain, unlike flattery, does not lie. But if sympathy weakens you, the second place destroys you with something far more intoxicating. Place 2 is the arena of unearned status, the court of flattery. Machiavelli dedicated an entire chapter of The Prince to flatterers because he understood their lethal subtlety. You imagine kings with servants bowing at their feet. You assume you are immune because you wear no crown. You are not. Your court is any environment that praises your potential instead of demanding execution. It is applause for intentions, celebration for announcements, admiration for identity rather than output. Your brain cannot distinguish between the dopamine of talking about victory and the dopamine of achieving it. When you inhabit rooms that applaud you for existing, hunger dies. Consider Perseus of Macedon, who inherited strength but surrounded himself with sycophants who assured him of destiny. When he faced the Roman Republic at the Battle of Pydna, illusion shattered. His forces collapsed in a single brutal confrontation. He was not ruined by enemy blades. He was ruined by applause long before the battle began. If you are the most praised person in the room, you are being prepared for slaughter. Praise lowers defenses. It quiets self-examination. It persuades you that myth equals mastery. The antidote is deliberate exposure to rooms where your past achievements mean nothing, where standards are merciless and feedback surgical. Seek advisors who tell truth when invited and silence when not. Control the feedback loop. Demand reality. Flee unearned praise. It is sugar coating decay. Yet when you reject flattery and commit to seriousness, you often step into a third trap disguised as productivity. Place 3 is the sanctuary of hypotheticals, the paralysis room. Potential does not die in spectacular failure. It dies in endless preparation. Whiteboards covered in immaculate strategies, hard drives full of unfinished courses, notebooks dense with ideas awaiting perfect timing. You call it research. You call it optimization. You are hiding. Machiavelli compared fortune to a violent river. Prepare in calm seasons, but when the flood arrives, act decisively. The man who endlessly calculates velocity drowns in mathematics. Perfectionism masquerades as excellence but is often cowardice in refined clothing. You want to bypass the humiliation of beginner status. But theory collapses under impact. The condottieri of Renaissance Italy studied ancient formations yet fell to brutal, pragmatic adversaries who cared nothing for elegance. Reading the menu does not equal tasting the food. The map is not the territory. Execution is the only language reality understands. Launch before comfort arrives. Speak before sentences are immaculate. Move at 70% clarity. Momentum forgives error. Paralysis forgives nothing. Break the glass of overanalysis and step into friction. 5 minutes in the arena will educate you more than 5 years in hypothetical rehearsal. When you finally act, resistance meets you. Exhaustion follows effort. In that fatigue, you glance sideways and step into the fourth environment of ruin, the hall of false equivalencies, the comparison trap. This is not merely envy induced by curated digital lives. It is the deeper strategic error of measuring your unfiltered reality against someone else's contextual advantage. Machiavelli warned that rulers destroy themselves when they imitate appearances without understanding foundations. You see wealth, influence, velocity. You do not see leverage, inherited capital, hidden failures, or moral compromises. In the hall of false equivalencies, you run races never designed for your terrain. Envy hijacks strategy. You abandon innate advantages to mimic competitors, becoming a diluted replica. A second-rate copy is always defeated by the original. History illustrates this through Carthage. Masters of maritime dominance, their strength lay at sea. Yet in rivalry with Rome, they allowed comparison to dictate theatre, attempting to outmaneuver a land power on land. The result was annihilation and salt sown into their soil. When you pivot purely to impress observers or chase trends detached from your core competency, you salt your own ground. Survival in this hall demands disciplined tunnel vision. Study others as data, not as verdicts on your worth. Strip emotion from observation. Extract mechanics.
Discard spectacle.
Your Chapter 1 cannot be judged against someone else's Chapter 20. Rely on your own arms, your own timing, your own terrain. The moment you stop glancing sideways, direction stabilizes. You may think escaping grievance, flattery, paralysis, and comparison liberates you. But another room awaits, one that exploits gratitude itself. Place 5 is the chamber of indebtedness, the favor trap. Shortcuts appear when fatigue deepens. Someone offers a key to a locked door. No strings, they say. Just help. Yet power throughout history has flowed less through swords than through ledgers. Consider Cosimo de' Medici, who consolidated influence in Florence not through open conquest but through strategic loans and calculated generosity. Those who accepted assistance discovered their autonomy tethered to invisible chains. A favor creates a ledger entry. Even when unstated, obligation forms. You accept support from a manipulative partner, funding from a controlling investor, employment from a domineering relative. You rationalize the transaction. But when divergence arises, the chain tightens. Guilt becomes leverage. After everything done for you is not a sentence. It is a collar. Psychological debt sustains toxic relationships, stagnant partnerships, and compromised ambitions for years. The gift that saves time today may mortgage freedom tomorrow. Nothing is free. If you avoid paying with effort or delay, you may pay with dignity. Independence requires discipline. Refuse Trojan horses. If assistance is unavoidable, define repayment immediately and close the ledger swiftly. A person who owes nothing negotiates without fear. But suppose you sever obligations and build independently. You climb. You gain traction. Then you confront the grandest and most seductive stage of all. Place 6 is the altar of public opinion, the transparency panopticon. After discipline hardens you, a primitive instinct remains, the desire for collective approval. You want the tribe to understand your vision, to interpret your boundaries as virtue. This craving births the final trap. Living fully perceived feels authentic, yet it is strategically fatal. Machiavelli observed that persuading the masses is easy, Fixing them in persuasion is nearly impossible. The crowd is volatile, driven by emotion rather than coherence. The rise and fall of Girolamo Savonarola demonstrates the danger. He harnessed moral outrage in Florence, orchestrating the infamous bonfire of the vanities as citizens destroyed luxuries in fervent righteousness. The same crowd that exalted him reversed when conditions shifted. He was executed in the very square where applause once thundered. The pedestal became the scaffold. Public opinion constructs and demolishes with equal enthusiasm. When you anchor identity to mass approval, emotional stability becomes hostage to strangers. You begin explaining boundaries, apologizing for ambition, shrinking to remain relatable. Transparency is mistaken for authenticity. Yet constant explanation signals insecurity. Each defense invites further scrutiny. The crowd tests limits when it senses hesitation. To endure, you must accept misinterpretation as collateral damage. Be comfortable appearing cold in someone else's narrative. When you sever toxic ties, accusations follow. When you raise standards, labels emerge. Silence is strategic dominance. Reputation is a shadow. Substance is the body casting it. Focus on the body. Step off the altar. Consolidate conviction. When approval ceases to govern action, power condenses. You become unpredictable to the masses and formidable to those who matter. Survey the map now revealed: grievance, flattery, paralysis, comparison, indebtedness, public opinion. 6 psychological slaughterhouses that drain agency not through force but through seduction. You believed exhaustion was physical, anxiety chemical, stagnation personal inadequacy. Often it was geography. You attempted growth in poisoned soil. No amount of affirmation counteracts an environment engineered for diminishment. The remedy is amputation. Curate spaces ruthlessly. Secure the borders of attention as if they were national frontiers. If a circle demands complaint as membership fee, exit. If applause replaces standards, depart. If generosity demands subservience, refuse. If the crowd demands apology for excellence, offer silence. This path isolates. Noise dissipates. Drama fades. Emptiness expands. But isolation becomes a laboratory. In silence you hear your own directives without interference. You transition from reacting to structures built by others to architecting your own domain. The threats you sought externally were blueprints you unconsciously approved. Each room existed because you entered and remained. You are both architect of ruin and architect of empire. Dismantle the rooms. Walk out without ceremony. And when the dust settles and silence surrounds you, another confrontation awaits, not with environments, but with reflection. Once distractions vanish, you face the final adversary, your own impulses, fears, and rationalizations. Mastery demands internal war as much as external strategy. The map is clear. The exits are visible. The question is whether you possess the severity required to leave comfort behind and build territory that does not erode you. The storm you fear becoming is the only force capable of protecting what you are capable of creating.